If there is one place in Ukraine which has come to symbolize the barbarity of this war, it is Bucha. The images which emerged from this town gave the world its first glimpse into the terrible consequences of a conflict prosecuted without limits. Today, the drive into Bucha looks very different to those first hours after it was liberated on the 1st of April. This was the first evidence of the crimes perpetrated here, the bodies of civilians left decomposing where they fell. For more than 6 weeks, the world's attention has focused on the horrors unfolding in Ukraine, in particular the town of Bucha to the west of Kyiv. We've investigated 3 separate atrocities in Bucha to give a sense of the widespread, indiscriminate murder being carried out by the Russian army. The first involves a man whose body was found at this mass grave next to St Andrew's Church, where investigators are beginning to uncover the scale of the slaughter in Bucha during the nearly month-long Russian occupation. Volodymyr Stefianko is just one of dozens of relatives looking for answers. The number of bodies buried here is unknown, but it's thought there are at least 115. They were hurriedly interred here by locals. Most were shot on the streets of Bucha. Now each is being carefully recovered for a full forensic examination. We're with Volodymyr as he waits to find out if his brother Dmytro is among the dead. As the face of each is uncovered, suddenly the awful moment of recognition.
Можно я ему закрыть?
Ты точно вин? Ты точно вин?
Больно было на душе сильно, жалко. Хотелось обнять, закрыть ему глаза, поговорить его. Просто потом слезы, боль. Не знаю, что еще. Ненависть к этим русским.
We accompany him to the place where his brother Dmytro was killed. We find an eyewitness who was there that day and detained moments later by the same group of half a dozen Russian soldiers.
Они побежали в ту сторону, а потом их там подстрелили и сюда притянули его. Ну, а здесь же стреляли.
Oleg's testimony matches the physical evidence here. We find a 7.62 shell casing from an RPK machine gun on the ground where Dmytro was executed. Bullet holes in the fence match Oleg's description of the shooting. Other neighbours here heard shots at around 10:30 on March the 26th, the day he disappeared.
That's him?
Да, только прическа больше была чуть-чуть.
Oleg recognises the photo of Dmytro and confirms he was shot dead here, adding another man who was with Dmytro managed to escape.
На курточке сзади овальная.
I ask Volodymyr if he feels he got closer to the truth about how his brother died.
Подстрелили сюда.
Да, то есть я уже все получил. Только интересно, когда тот бежал, просил ли мой брат помощи, чтобы помог ей. Или просто тупо остался лежать, уже что будет, то будет. Мой брат не всегда может просить о помощи, он такой.
Dmytro's murder was just one of possibly hundreds of similar summary executions, but a mile north of the place he died is a children's camp where there's evidence of more organised killing. What you're about to see is a video recorded by the Ukrainian authorities after they first entered the basement of the building used by the Russians. Their hands bound, they appear to have been shot as they knelt on the floor. While the Russian government has accused Ukraine of faking massacres like this, we found several pieces of evidence pointing to Russian responsibility. The children's camp was marked with a V, a symbol used by Russian forces to identify themselves. Russian ration packs litter the entrance to the cellar. But inside, there are more clues. You can see the bullet marks still in the wall here. The angle that the bullets came in is coming down, suggesting the person was standing over there and the victims were down here. There is actually a bullet down here, which is a .545 caliber Kalashnikov bullet with a steel core, which is only issued to the military. We were given access to this cellar because forensic teams have concluded their work. The identities of the men found here have now been established. They were Sergei Mateshko, Vladimir Bochenko, Viktor Prudko, Valery Plukko, and Dmitro Schulmeister. Dmitro's sister says he and 4 others refused to flee, deciding to help others to escape Bucha until the Russians caught them.
Он жил обычной жизнью, находился у себя дома, на своей земле. Пришли звери, варвары, которые отобрали у него жизнь. За что? За что?
2 miles south of the children's camp is the site of another massacre, this time even larger. Outside an agricultural construction agency, the bodies of 8 men were found near these steps to the side of the building. 3 more were found elsewhere on the site. This is the scene which investigators found. This man had his hands bound behind his back and his fingernails removed. One has electrical cable tied around his feet and has been beaten across the back. A military crate with the markings of the 7th Paratroop Unit was found close by. Inside the building was another body on a stairwell. This is where some of the most harrowing images to emerge from Bucha were taken. The police have found 8 bodies here and more inside. They don't know how many people were killed here in total. Forensic officers are continuing to comb this building for clues, but it appears this was some sort of torture centre.
Это был штаб, ну и там же и расстреливали, то есть тут проводились фильтрационные, в том числе фильтрационные мероприятия, как, ну если можно так назвать.
By filtration activities, he means selecting which prisoners would be executed. We've identified one of the dead men found here as Anatoly Prohidko, who was born in 1983 and may have been targeted because he was with Ukraine's territorial defence. A witness who saw his body told us his cheek had been cut out, there were multiple stab wounds on his torso, and he'd been shot through the chest.
З приводу розстрілу цих людей, то руки були більшості зв'язані. Тобто це ознаки катування.
One man has spoken to us who saw, heard and survived the massacre. Speaking for the first time, but still too scared to show his identity, he says Russian soldiers were going house to house, rounding up civilians to decide who to execute. He was only spared because he could prove he'd fought in Afghanistan as a Soviet soldier 40 years ago.
Первого парня розстріляли в спину. От. Потім ще 2 розстріляли. От. Мене поставили далі, от. Потім ще там людей зібрали. Ну, чоловік 10-12 отобрали. От. Биті, футболки натягнуті, самі, руки зв'язані, їх завели в торець. Контору вот эту агропостачу, і їх там. Бо солдат вернувся, зразу, автоматний очередь, солдат вернувся. Солдат вернувся. І вони потім, убиті всі були.
As the war crimes investigation starts, there are of course questions about whether these 3 cases were part of a wider campaign of orchestrated murder directed by senior leaders in Russia, something I put to Ukraine's Prosecutor General. Was this orchestrated or was this from just rogue units of the Russian army?
Of course, it was ordered to kill civilians because we see gunshots. That's why it's actually it was ordered. And what you see here in Bucha and other small cities, small villages which were occupied in Kyiv region, actually you see it's not only war crimes; it's crimes against humanity.
To what extent does President Putin hold responsibility for this?
President Putin is a main war criminal of 21st century. Of course, he is responsible of all of this, what is going on now in Ukraine. But you remember that it was in Chechnya, and what is after Chechnya? It was in Georgia, it was in Syria, and he is still not responsible for all these crimes against humanity. That's why we should do everything to punish people who are responsible for this.
The service to remember the victims of Bucha at St Andrew's Church involves a choir, now a quarter of the size it used to be. One has died, the others have fled, but the Russian occupation hasn't silenced those who remain.
Але простити тих, хто на твоїх очах гвалтував твоїх дітей, дуже важко. І цей шлях довгий, той шлях важкий.
But while survivors search their souls for the strength to forgive, Bucha will never forget what happened here. And neither